Tell me about something that shaped your life or a realization you had that changed your life.
Okay, well, again, I'll talk about reading because that I think is something I have never stopped doing and continue to do all the time. I'm always reading, and in fact, I've written two novels, self-published, um, but I've always loved to read from the time I was really in elementary school, and I was encouraged by a third grade teacher who I think encouraged both writing and reading for me. She was really into building my imagination, even though I would be writing, when we had writing exercises, I'd write these way out sci-fi monster stories about monsters with 40 eyes and 27 legs and 5 heads, which to me was sci-fi at the time, but I always tried to make the monsters worse and worse and worse and worse. Um, but she never made fun of me. She always told me how creative I was. And, um, and then I give my mother a lot of credit because she took us boys to the library fairly often. And, I would get like bunches of books. My brothers, I don't even remember seeing my brothers read that much, but I read all the time, and she would take us to get books, and we joined a book club, um, and actually she joined it for Mark because he wanted to join a book club, but I always grabbed the books and read all the books, and my mother read to us at night. Which a lot of people probably don't even know, but she would come into our room and read, and I loved. She used to read like Tall Tales and like Pecos Bill and all these old American tales, but also Bible stories and stuff like that, like story about Noah's Ark and things like that. Not in a religious context, but in the context of like, I don't know, it's almost like hearing about action movies. But she read to us at night, and she also, because I was so into comic books, um, she also made a deal with me because I was spending my money on comic books that for every um, real book I read, she would buy me like two comic books. And so that was easy for me because I was reading real books. Most of what I was reading at the time were biographies of sports stars and things like that. But then I got into fiction from our book club. There was a series called Danny Dunn, who was a kid that was really into science. The first one was Danny Dunn and the anti-gravity paint. And he invented this paint that could float, things that you painted with it. And it was a whole series. It was kind of like the Harry Potter of my time, this whole Danny Dunn series. And then there were, the typical mystery things. I can't even remember the Hardy Boys and stuff like that I read. Um, and eventually I got into kind of, reading about true things that happened, whether it was Pearl Harbor or historical things and historical people, like still biographies, the biography of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. But I was always reading, and there were times, as much as I liked to be outside and to play outside, where everybody else would be outside and I'd be up in my bed reading. And much like Mickey, I at night would sneak and read. I'd read under my covers with a flashlight or something, but I just couldn't stop reading. Um, when I got into when I got into high school, um, I was in English class, and this one teacher came up to me and she told me, she said, you're an excellent writer, which I never gave a thought about, never crossed my mind. She said, I'm going to put you next year in honors English so that you can get at a higher level of English. And when I was ready to graduate, she told me, she said, you really need to major in this. You're really good at it. Well, I wanted to be an astronaut. Plus, I'd been told that I should um, pursue the sciences and stuff like that, which was so ridiculous because I was so bad at everything that had to do with science and math. But anyway, I remember going to, they had this event for University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC. And I went with my friends, Jerry and Leo, because they were going to the school too. And we had to sign up for courses that we wanted to take. And I signed up for like 2 physics courses, 2 biology courses, and calculus, because I had read what you needed to be an astronaut. Well, of course, once I started taking those courses at school, I was dropping courses faster than, you could drop a plane out of the sky. I was dropping courses like crazy. I had no aptitude. They used to make fun of me because once I got on I think it was a calculus or chemistry test, I got a 3. And I always used to kid that you got a 3 if you just put your name right at the top. But I actually got a 3. Then I thought I took a psychology course, and I got called up after the first test. That the professor called me up and he said, "Mr. Stone, you might want to consider another major." And that was like a month into the year. So it took a while of me dropping courses and adding courses. And then actually what kind of put me over the edge was when I met Mom and we decided we were going to get married. And I finally realized I'm not going to graduate with the grades I have. I had like a C- average in college, which the only thing that was carrying me was history courses and things like that. All my science courses I was failing. And I was taking courses, they had mini-mester courses. They had a semester in between the 2 winter semesters and over the summer. I was in college for 4 straight years when I was in regular college. But in my 3rd year, when we got married, actually, when I was in my 3rd year, I started taking literature courses, and I was blowing them out of the water. I mean, just, I made the dean's list 2 years in a row. I loved the teachers I had, and from that point on, I wanted to be a teacher and teach literature and poetry. So when I graduated, I went to graduate school at the American University in Washington, which I had to drive and commute to. But I also made the dean's list there all the time, and I loved analyzing poetry. Like everybody else would just kind of read it, but I would learn about the author and I'd see how it fit into their life and their history and things like that. So, reading and literature, and then, once I graduated, I just still kept reading. I just read all the time, and that's, even to this day, I've got a full Kindle, more than a full Kindle, and I just keep reading. And for a while, I was writing. When I retired, the first thing I did was say I was going to write a novel that I had in my mind since college, and I did. I wanted to show myself that I had the discipline. Wanted to show my kids and grandkids that I had the discipline to sit down and actually build characters and build a story. And that's one of my proudest accomplishments, even though it's not it's not a seller, let alone a bestseller. But it's something I'm very proud of. And then I wrote a second one, which in my mind wasn't as good, but it was more fun. It was a science fiction one. It was more fun to write. So anyway, reading is a thing that I think changed my life.